The galactic conclave's checkpoint at Station Mirathene was, by every measure of interstellar design, impenetrable. 7 layers of biometric screening. Psionic resonance locks calibrated to 43 distinct neural frequencies. Quantum seal doors that required simultaneous authorization from 3 separate species governing councils. The station had stood at the crossroads of 17 trade routes for 200 years, and in that time, not a single unauthorized being had passed through its primary gates. That record ended on a Tuesday. Kale Vera stood at the central monitoring console, his 4 eyes tracking feeds across a wall of screens that spanned the entire length of the security hub. As commander of Station Mirathene's defense forces, he had overseen the processing of 11 million travelers in the past decade. He had turned away Vorgothi smugglers, detained Sealan Psi runners, and once though famously, talked a Dravak warship out of docking without filing a manifest. He was not a being who was easily surprised. The woman walking through Gate 7 surprised him. She was small, by galactic standards. Bipedal, soft-skinned, without any visible sensory augmentation or biological weaponry. Her credentials had pinged the outer scanner as Tier 4 diplomatic, low clearance, the kind issued to junior cultural attaches and academic observers. She should have been routed to the secondary processing queue, where she would wait approximately 6 standard hours while 3 separate councils verified her paperwork. Instead, she was simply walking through. Not running. Not sneaking. Not phasing through walls or deploying a cloaking matrix. She was strolling, hands loose at her sides, a small carry case slung over one shoulder, as though the 7 layers of the most sophisticated security architecture in the known quadrant were a mildly inconvenient revolving door. Kale watched the feeds with the specific stillness of someone whose brain has not yet decided how to respond to something impossible. The biometric gate should have sealed on her the moment her clearance tier registered. The psionic lock should have triggered a soft stasis field. The quantum seal should have required council authorization. None of it had. He watched her pause at a refreshment terminal in the transit atrium, examine the options with mild interest, and select something hot to drink. He was moving before he consciously made the decision. Mara Ellison had been on 14 stations, 6 orbital platforms, and 2 deep space waypoints in the last 3 years. She had learned, through patient observation, that the key to navigating alien bureaucracy was to never look like you were navigating it. Uncertainty was a scent most sentient species could detect. Confidence, worn correctly, read as authorization. She wrapped her hands around the warm container and took a careful sip. The security commander reached her in under 4 minutes. She had estimated 3, so she gave him credit. He was tall, easily 2 meters, with the slate-gray plating that characterized his species, and 4 eyes arranged in a wide arc that she knew provided near omnidirectional vision. He moved with the particular economy of someone who had been in security long enough that every motion was a controlled choice. He stopped at a distance that was, by human instinct, slightly too far for casual conversation and slightly too close for comfortable confrontation. "You passed through Gate 7, he said. "I did," Mara agreed. "Your clearance tier does not permit unescorted access to the primary transit atrium." "No," she said, "it doesn't." He waited. His species, she knew, communicated a great deal through silence. She let it stretch for 2 full seconds, long enough to be a response, not so long as to be a challenge. "I would like an explanation," he said. "The honest one, or the diplomatic one?" "The honest one." Mara looked at him with the steady, unhurried attention that had gotten her into and out of more difficult rooms than this one. "Your system flagged me at the outer scanner. Tier 4, secondary queue, 6-hour hold. I looked at the gate architecture and noticed the psionic resonance lock is calibrated on a frequency band that assumes the subject will attempt to counter it or comply with it. It doesn't account for subjects who simply don't register as a threat because they aren't thinking about the lock at all." Kale's outer eyes tracked slightly inward, a tell she'd learned to read as the equivalent of a raised eyebrow. You bypassed a psionic security lock by not thinking about it. I was thinking about whether I wanted something hot or cold to drink. The lock didn't know what to do with that, so it defaulted to a neutral state. The biometric gate sealed, but the pressure plate sequence has a 0.4-second window during the seal cycle. I was already through. She lifted the container. And the cue looked genuinely terrible. Silence. I want you to understand, Kale said, with the careful precision of someone who was rewriting their understanding of something in real time, that this installation's security architecture was designed by the Leth Consortium. It took 40 years to build. It has never been bypassed. I'm sure it's very good against the things it was designed to stop, Mara said, without any particular pride in it. Your lock assumes the intruder knows they're bypassing a lock. That's a reasonable assumption for almost every species in the conclave. You all have some form of psionic sensitivity, or technological augmentation, or biological threat assessment hardware. The lock registers that register, if that makes sense. It's reading the reader. And humans don't register. We register as confused tourists who want a hot drink. The system genuinely doesn't know what threat category to assign us, so it just, she made a small, open gesture with her free hand, waits. Another silence. This one had a different texture. I should detain you, Kale said. Probably, Mara agreed. You bypassed 7 security layers. Technically 4. The other 3 I didn't interact with at all. They weren't triggered because nothing upstream flagged me for them. He looked at her for a long moment with all 4 eyes, which she'd learned was the equivalent of very serious attention. You're the cultural liaison for the Human Cooperative's new trade delegation. I am. And you walked through my gate instead of waiting 6 hours in secondary processing because I have a meeting in 40 minutes, and because, she paused, I thought someone here should know about the gap. He was quiet. That's why I didn't go around the atrium, she continued. I could have gone straight to the meeting room. But I stopped here, at the main security hub's refreshment terminal, where I knew you'd have eyes. I wasn't trying to disappear into the station. I was waiting for you to find me. Kale Vera stood very still for a moment. Then he did something she hadn't seen a Leth species officer do in 3 years of diplomatic work. He sat down. At the nearest seating fixture, with the particular weighted motion of someone recalibrating. How many humans know about this vulnerability? He asked. Any human who's patient enough to look at the gate sequence and stubborn enough to not be impressed by it. She considered. Which is a significant percentage of us, honestly. And none of them have exploited it. Some have, probably, for small things. Getting through a queue faster. Ducking into a restricted lounge. But formally exploit it? She shook her head. We're trying to get trade agreements ratified. Causing an interstellar security incident is counterproductive. That is, Kale said, slowly, an almost unreasonably reasonable position. We've had a long time to learn that being the most dangerous thing in the room is less useful than being the most trustworthy thing in the room. He looked at her again. You're telling me that humans have been passing through secured installations throughout the conclave. Not systematically. Opportunistically, occasionally, and usually for embarrassingly mundane reasons. She finished her drink. The point is, you needed to know. And the people who needed to tell you weren't going to, because they weren't sure how it would be received. And you are sure? I'm sure you're a security commander who would rather know about a gap in your system than not know. Most beings in your position would. She set down the container. And I'm sure that the best way to start a trade negotiation is to hand the other side something valuable before you ask for anything. Kale was quiet for a long time. Then he stood, and the particular straightening of his frame was something she'd learned to read as respect, not the formal, hierarchical kind, but the genuine kind, which was rarer and worth more. I will need a full report, he said. Every point of vulnerability you identified. I have it drafted. She patted the carry case. I was going to offer it at the end of the meeting. But I can give it to you now. And your meeting? Is in 37 minutes. She allowed herself a small smile. I'm very good with time. Kale Vera, commander of Station Mirathine, who had spent 20 years ensuring that nothing passed through his gates without authorization, looked at the small soft-skinned human standing in his atrium drinking a hot beverage and felt something that his species did not have a clean word for, the specific, unsettling, and oddly welcome sensation of meeting something genuinely new. Come, he said. I'll escort you myself. She fell into step beside him, carrying case over her shoulder, perfectly unhurried. Behind them, Gate 7 sealed itself, finally, 2 minutes late, still trying to figure out what it had been looking at. From that quarter forward, Station Mirathine instituted a new policy. Humans were the only species permitted to pass through primary transit without standard clearance processing. Not because they were authorized. Because they were the only ones honest enough to tell you when they shouldn't be.